And we are back with more information regarding the Revelation. It's a very interesting set of Megillas, and there is a whole lot more coming, and a whole lot more being placed in a proper context. And after studying a portion of it, it shows very clearly some lack of understanding regarding the formation of these particular set of writings. So then we understand from the previous videos that Yohanan, he was not on the island when he received the revelation. We understand he was sent to the island later. However, obviously a person can understand that he had taken notes. So we can verify certainly, and starting at the very end of Revelation on the 20th chapter, it states a portion very interesting. It is regarding the 5th verse of the 20th chapter and also the 6th. So then it states regarding the set apart people, and we understand the set apart people are those from the Hebrew line or Israel. So this is the first coming from the dead, the first section coming from the dead, and is related with the first portion. There is a first portion and a second portion, and those are related. And then anointed and set apart is he that has part in the first. Over them the second has no dominion, but they will be and are priests of Elohim and of his Mashiach, and they will reign with him 1,000 years. So this is very interesting because it's not only related with Revelation, the vengeance themselves, but it's a time period described by Yohanan from the time he had the first visions, and then also the understanding of the time of the grace period ever since the Mashiach. And then goes on with many other aspects. There are unholy anointings and then holy anointings, and then the times that they were released, and there is the named heavenly legal terms also regarding it. It makes a very interesting reading, but it is somewhat complicated to the point of having the proper context of what it fits. So from chapter to chapter, they are not in a chronologic formation. Truly it is not. Because the first section of it, the first, second, and third, relates with the understanding of the anchoring churches, in quote, anchoring churches. Those are the places from where vengeance is coming from. And obviously then later it shows other understandings regarding then the Spirit, and then thrones, and then the set apart people. So those are, each of those areas are specific of a time, but related with a vision from heaven and earth at the same time. And there is also the first portion and second portion related with each other in a shadow form, relating first with the grace period of time, and then the ruling for 1,000 years of the set apart people. And then afterwards there was a situation where Satan had taken his part on the nearing line, and then he was then set aside for 1,000 years, thus became the prison spoken of. And then at the very end we understand that then after then the set apart people had ruled for the first 1,009 years, there was the Holy Church of the Holy Sepulchre that was destroyed, and that was the turning point of a shifting from the dominion of the set apart. And then afterwards started then the prison, but the prison, understand, the prison is the fact of not being available rather than being shut in enclosed place. And these are obviously very noticeable when a person begins to do a bit of a research and finds out what it means through history. And then we are living yet at the 20th chapter of Revelation, shortly before Satan then the Hashtan then will to be released from his prison. And then we did talk regarding the previous videos regarding the nearing line set in Shavuot. So this is what it means. Then when the nearing line is cleansed, that's the part when Satan is going to be removed from his prison. It's not a pit or any kind of a place that is ugly and miserable and such. Those were in fact demons related with a nuclear blast. Because as we understand from the heavenly terms, every time that it is a catastrophic event where people they die by the thousands, there are some legal factors behind those people, and their choice is in either having the Messiah or not having him, and what to do with them, if they are legal to be destroyed or murdered. This is the time when the demons then, many of them are going to be released for this specific task, and those are done in the spirit. Understand that this is not a situation where people are going to have visions of demons in the air. It is spiritual. It is tied up in quote with the spiritual world, but then it comes the consequences then through the spiritual understanding of it, and they are obviously linked with these evil demonic spirits. So then these areas then they are related and intertwined. But then when the time of Satan then is completed, he's going to be released, and then from that time he's going to have a short period in the earth. And then we understand from the first portion of the spring feast, it was 490 days of ministry of Yahshua. Then we understand that this is half of the prophets, half of the Torah, and the other half obviously would be 490, because it has to be a shadow of the first. So then it gives us the understanding of the time that we are living in. However, if you observe the time when Yahshua came in 3999, then the first title of Yahshua when he came by the people that came from the east, obviously from those people from the time of Daniel, in terms of what Daniel said for them to do. And then they came and they said, where is he, the king? So this is the main point. He was given the title king when he was born. So then we understand from the time he being the leader and the king of the set apart, then in Metichiach, the 24th chapter, it states that at the end there would be a reduction of the time. So this reduction of the time is in benefit of the set apart and not the goys outside of the camp. So there is a huge distinction. So then if we then understand that Yahshua then later he spent couple of days with the Samaritans. So he was there teaching and preaching. And then a couple thousand years later would end the time of the Goys. And then we understand that there was also a reduction of the time in benefit of the set apart. So then the Goys, they are not the set apart people, so the counting of the couple thousand years doesn't start then with the couple of days spent in Samaria. It would be from the time of his birth. So it's very understandable because it's related with the set apart. It's not related with the Goys. But then for the benefit of then the set apart, the time would be reduced. So we understand also from Revelation and from the dam covenant, because Israel is yet under a dam covenant. They are only not being loyal to the grace period imputed in the law, because it is yet the time of grace. But vengeance is coming. And the vengeance does not count the part of grace when it comes to the set apart people because of the dam covenant. When there is a dam covenant done, the part that does not maintain the side then pays with life. This is the dam covenant's requirements. And in this particular case, there is only a requirement, and a person must pay with that. And then the death obviously comes the life of a person that was given away in exchange for the breaking of the dam covenant. So then we understand from the time of Yahshua, the grace came and was imputed in the law. Not for them to sin, but for them to do their part in saving the Goys outside. They are slaves of the world as they were slaves during the time they were in Egypt. So it begins to kind of link those areas, and then a person can understand what is the plan. So then later, when the time then expires, because the time that we are living in at this moment of the third month of 6012 is the very period of the time of the reduction of the time. And we don't know precisely when the very end of this period of reduction is going to end, because then at the moment then Nehushtan is released from the nearing line, and he entered in about 1,000 years ago, then he is going to be in a state of justice. He is going to be in a position only of wrath. And every biblical order given in the Torah must be in place and active, because it is the only protection that they have against the onslaught of wrath that's coming against them. That's why they are the set apart people. And there is no longer grace available in it, because Shaul said, if you then trample the Son of Elohim because of your sins, there is no longer sacrifices that can be made for the atonement of such. So then what does it say? That they are the set apart people under a dam covenant, and Yahshua can't then release them from this dam covenant, because Yahshua can't go against the Father. And then not only this, but then if they are caught outside of the camp, it's going to be death. So it's either returning to the camp or death. So this is the time that we are living in at this very moment. Let's say, for instance, 3999, and then a couple thousand years would be 5999. Okay, so then would be a couple thousand years. From the time of the Samaritans, we can calculate roughly another year. So then if we make the calculations from the time he was with the Samaritans, around 40, 30, end of 40, 30, would be then 20, around 20 plus 20, 30. Not even that far. But then we must understand that this time was then reduced. because it's not from the point of view of the goys giving a couple thousand years for them. It was in view of the people of the set apart. So this time then reduces from the main calculation of the couple thousand years granted to the Samaritans. So then we understand from the time where the Samaritans then they would be starting, the time of the goys, a person might say, until the end of it, plus there is a reduction of the time given in benefit of the set apart. Okay, so then since he is the king and the time counted was started when he became king, when he entered the earth, then we must understand the prophecies, they must be focusing in him as the king. So then there was obviously a reduction of time given, so then it would fit the description of the time period when his people, the set apart, should return to their camps. So it's a very interesting time that we are living in, because making the calculations would be 10 plus 7 years of time slack that would be precisely from the couple thousand years, from 40, 31, and then a couple thousand years later. But then this time was then reduced for the sake of the elect. So we must understand, is the time reduced in benefit of the goys? No, the goys, they were given the time. They are not bound by a prophetic number. What is bound by a prophetic number is the king. The king is truly bound by a set of years and time, not the goys. So then a person must understand the time period, and the time period that we are living in at this very moment is then prior of Satan being released from the nearing line. Because when the church of the Holy Sepulchre was then destroyed, that was the time when then the world said, in other words, we do not want anymore the Messiah. And then he entered this, in quote, prison. It was a position placed that he had taken over the spiritual line of the world. But the problem is, he doesn't belong there. He was placed there because of the deal made in the world. And then vengeance is coming. And every word spoken then in the Torah and the prophets, in the Torah grace and the vengeance, they must be in line, because the Creator is coming to the earth. It must be done per schedule. So there is no confusion in this situation whatsoever. There is a reduction of time from the time that Yahshua was born, because of the sake of the elect, not because of the numbering of the goys. We must understand the main focus is the set apart as prophetic timing. So then sets the stage of we are very nearing, from maybe 5 years, the very most of slack, from 5 to 10 years. There is kind of a lack of time, and we are kind of living in a time where people then, they set apart, they should return to their camps. Because the first portion then was given, and then when the first portion was given, then Yahshua did rule with his people until the destruction of the Holy Sepulchre. That was the very place where, in prophetic terms, it was said to the world that they did not want anymore the Messiah. So then Satan had taken over this spiritual line. But he is going to be released from this spiritual line. Then he's going to be in a state of wrath. And that's when the wrath then starts. And then we also understand that then when a person takes this portion because it's related with a set apart people, and then they must return to their camps, so then what is earlier stated in a form of holy and unholy anointings can be then released. And then it shows in 7th and the 8th and then the 9th, and then shows more activity in the heavenly places regarding then the nuclear blast that is coming on the third part of the earth, because it is related with the destruction. And we understand when Yohanan, he was speaking of that he saw, it was a kind of a coming from the sky or from heaven, a burning like a lamp. And then he said, in a third part of the creatures in the sea that had life died, and in a third part of the ships were destroyed. So the destruction of these ships, there is not a record in the past that it would take a third part of the earth, because we would never had this number of ships during the time of Yohanan, or let's say another 1,500 years later. This is for our time. And it is truly related with a nuclear weapon, because it's the only type of weapon that can cause such a destruction. And then there is also the outcome of the parts of this nuclear debris, a person might say, that causes then the water to be contaminated and people dying as a result of it. And as these take place, then other areas, then they would be related with the spiritual side, the releasing of these demons from these pit, and then they are obviously armed with a certain evil anointing because of the evil done by the people prior of the blast. So these areas must be placed in layers so a person can understand what's going on. But it is very evident because of the time that we are living in, and then obviously there is this area where Satan is going to be released from the nearing line. And then from Matthew 24, it shows then of the time set, and then the set apart people then being granted with a reduction of time. So we are far ahead, a whole lot more than we ever thought before. Because analyzing the first, we understand from the first chapters, it's merely a statement where Yahshua, he sets the place from where vengeance is coming from. Any person can kind of understand. And then the others, they state a bit of the visions from heaven regarding the earth. Those are visions in the spirit that relate. So for instance, when they state throne, there are places, there are thrones. What these means, those are the arks of the covenant of each camp. Each camp around the world where they are going in, it's going to have the Ark of the Covenant. Is it where his presence was at? Because it must be a shadow of the first. So then, what Yahshua said, whatsoever Moses said for you to do, these do and observe. Then becomes the first portion that we understand from the time of Shaul. Those camps they were around. And they had lots of visions related with the Kadosh Kadoshims of those set apart places. So then the first portion was given, but there is the second portion given also, including the 144,000 and 12,000 per tribe, because then what used to be in the past is going to be the shadow of the second portion. So it makes it very interesting, but have in mind what is coming is vengeance and not grace. Because vengeance is synonymous of wrath, and whatsoever is not found in the Torah, it's going to be destroyed. So that's why, for instance, it's very important for the Hebrew brothers, while there is this reduction going on, for them to return to their camps. It's absolutely obvious. Not a moment of wasting, for sure. Because by reading the time periods where Yohanan stated it, we are at the very, very, very end. And not only this, of the end that we are sensing that the world is entering in another phase of transition, plus there is the reduction of time, and we don't know when it's going to end. We know for sure that the number of years granted to the Samaritans is reduced in benefit of the set apart. So any calculation made up to that point is going to be reduced, because it's based upon the set apart time prophetic line and not the actual number granted to the Goys. But these can also give us the understanding of the importance of having the Hebrew brothers to return to their camps, because it's going to be very serious, and the time is coming for it. Many people don't even understand what this nearing line is set in Shavuot. They don't understand, because the functions of Ruach HaKodesh had to be performed in such a way that they would be linked. They would be linked, because the faith of the Goys outside of the camp, they must be linked. And this is what it means. For instance, there is the vision understanding of the people that they were slain and they were under the altar. What do you think this situation refers? To those that died outside, because the camp is protected. So those Goys, then, faithful Goys that are being slain outside of the camp, the part of the Spirit in them is in each Kadosh Kadoshim. And that's why when the vision in heaven came, it was related with Kadosh Kadoshims in the earth, and those being slain outside, but they were linked in the Spirit. And that's where they were linked in the Spirit with. So then it starts making sense. And then earlier in Revelation it stated the prayers of the set apart being taken up by the angels. And then obviously the Goys outside of the camps, they're going to be constant making requests, because the situation is going to be desperate outside. Because wrath is going to be outside of the camp. And understand, when there is wrath and no sin, any part of the scripture not in place outside is going to be a requirement for it, or for them. So it's a very serious time, and that's why there is translated the word tribulation, because it was never experienced before. During the time of the first oracles, they were there and they had animals they could sacrifice. And then Yahshua came, then the sacrificing of animals were abolished. They were completed, and then don't use them anymore. And Shaul said, if you break this damn covenant of the set apart, there is no more sacrifice that can be made. So then the situation is going to be very serious and very desperate, because they're going to truly live by faith by every word that Yahshua spoke, so they can maintain themselves alive. But they are going to be linked with their spirits with each Kadosh Kadoshim where they are found at. And then as the outside influences they begin to come, and some of them would be obviously slain because of the faith in Yahshua, but their spirits are going to be linked with the Kadosh Kadoshims. And that's why there was the vision from heaven that saw them under the altar. So this, in a spiritual sense, is the understanding from the time period of Israel when they had the temple and the tabernacle. And then there is another topic when Shaul was speaking of in Romans. He said regarding the renewing of the mind, his viewpoint was the renewing of the mind with the scriptures in Hebrew. He did not mean any other language, because Shaul's objective was making sure Goys would be then placed in a position of being made tzaddik, and then they would be at the front of the camp being trained in Hebrew. So that's why it's very important for the nation of Israel to get themselves cleaned up and return to their camps around the world. So then these prophecies then can go forward, because at the very moment we are living in a time of the reduction for the benefit of the set apart, so they can return to their camps. Because when the total time is expired, they're going to start dying, because vengeance is coming. And in Nahash then, he won't no longer be at the nearing line to give them a slack. He's not going to have any of himself. It's going to be pure wrath in the earth. And those people set apart under a damn covenant related, the party that breaks the covenant shall die. What do you think is going to be the end of the Hebrews caught outside of the camp? That's why they are set apart. So it's a very, very serious time period we are living in. And then from this Revelation, the 20th chapter, then at the end of the 7th verse of the 20th chapter, then from that time, before then, and then including also the Gog and Magog, those are going to be the times where then the nations, they are going to come together for war. And then obviously during this time from 7, 8, and 9th, it's going to have the nuclear blast. And what would be the portion of the earth, for instance, with the most ships? Would be around China, India, north of Australia. That area over there is replete with ships. And then the third part of the earth then would be darkened. And there is obviously the physical side of it in terms of the actual part that takes place in the earth, and then the spiritual. But it's not coming any other spiritual unusual fact other than Yahshua showing up later in the skies as he said he would return. He would then return. Of course he would return later. And this is the only heavenly fact that people are going to observe in the heavens. The rest of them are going to be only spiritual. Spiritual heavenly places. Because our warfare is not against the flesh, neither the dam. What does it mean? Shaul then was speaking of the sins. Because of the sins prior of the time of Yahshua, they could sacrifice and take care of their sins. He's not talking about going to war with another person. He's talking about sin in a person. Because our war is not against the flesh or the dam. It starts with the spiritual. If a person was in sin back then, he had to require the death of an animal. And then later came Yahshua. It's done by words and faith in him, obviously. But then when he was speaking of the spiritual realms, he was speaking in the combat. It's not in a physical area. It is in a spiritual area. So then revelation is other than when Yahshua returns to the earth to gather his people before the shower of sulfur. Is the only heavenly place is going to take place, and also the actual earthly place. The rest is only spiritual. In the spiritual situation at the moment there is a reduction in the time. This is the very time that the Israelites should return to their camps, as it was back during the time of Shaul. They were part of it, and they did the first portion of it as such as described by Moses, because from the time of Yahshua then up to the 1009, this was the time that they ruled for 1,000 years. Okay? Then the world back then made a deal. They do not want anymore any part in the Mashiach. However, the spiritual line was set in place during the time of Shavuot. Then Satan then went to this line, and then in quote he was in prison. But he is going to be released out of this spiritual line. And this is when the end of the 1,000 years is going to be completed. And it is very short. From the 1009, from the destruction of the Holy Sepulchre, and then we understand that the time is very short. And we are living in a time where reduction is going to be not granted, but we are in a time of being granted with. So it's truly an eye-opening, because these visions of Yohanan, they are not physical visions, they are visions of the Spirit. What is going to take place in the spiritual realm. So other than, obviously, those areas related with the famine, for instance, related with the fire, related with hail, those are obviously related with the weather. Those are weather related, caused by specific areas in the spiritual realm. And then the rest of it, except when Yahshua comes to rescue his last remnant from the earth, then he's going to show up. This is the only heavenly feature of the entire revelation. The rest is spiritual. There is no link with the physical eyes of the world and then the spiritual visions of heaven, other than Yahshua coming in the clouds. So then places us in a position where we can understand what it means, rather than being deceived by the false Bible out there. Because we must remain loyal to the Torah as given at first, and the Torah and then the oracles, and how the spiritual understanding of the tabernacle was then set in their relation then with the Creator, and then those were shadows of the future. So there is no crazy understanding of physical mixed with the spiritual, and physical eyes watching in the skies and then demons flying around. No, it's going to be very specific, but then in the spirit. So then the trumpets, and then the seals, and the horses, those are very specific releasing of evil anointings because of the evil that the people were doing in the earth and will be doing in the earth, because we understand that portions of Revelation was from the time of Yohanan, first portion, and then Revelation is also part of the second portion as the shadow picture of the first. Those are related. Those are layers of understanding of the shadows of each other. And then the second is the shadow of the first, and then the first of the shadow of the previous. So these are layers of understanding. And then obviously Yohanan, he was not from a place where there were huge mountains and mudslides and tsunamis, because it states the islands would be no more, and then mountains would be no more. They were removed. It's not that they were removed. He wasn't familiar with the weather terms. The only point that he saw in a vision, there was a vision of the mountain, and then afterwards there was no more mountain. And then there was an island there, and then afterwards there was no more island. As they were being thrown away. He could not describe it. He had to write it. But those are weather related. And then of course the horses, those are also parts in the spirit. That's why it's important a person understand there is the body, soul, and the spirit. If a person has the soul and the spirit linked with a demonic activity, then the revelation makes no sense. But there is a sense where a person can understand where it's coming from. And a large portion of it is spiritual first, and then there is the setup of the anchoring city churches, and then afterwards from those cities would come vengeance, and then comes the relation of what then Yahshua did, and he earned the place where he could break the seals, and then comes the breaking of the seals, and then the shofars. But these are in a basic understanding of a nuclear blast. There is a relation with mostly of a nuclear blast related with the unholy anointings, and there are also parts of holy anointings because of the grace given by Yahshua, though those people they are scoundreling themselves with and requires judgment from the other side, from the holy side. So each side there is a specific area. It can't be done otherwise. So then we begin to understand. For instance, when the angel said then to Yohanan that he should go out and prophesy. So then it was very kind of interesting because he was given a section of Revelation, and then for instance at the end of chapter 10, okay, chapter 10, and then he said, the angel said, or the person that he spoke with him, you must again prophesy upon many nations and people, princes and kings. This verse 11 of the 10th chapter states a physical action from the part of Yohanan to teach regarding the vengeance to come and the visions he had. So then obviously when he went out, he was a Shilishim. He was already involved in teaching the relink. He had the understanding of the kingdom to come, and then he was granted also the revelation visions of the vengeance to come. People were scared to death of Yohanan, because he was then preaching and teaching what would be coming. So then obviously during the time of Yohanan, he had the spiritual line clear and clean, because they were reigning in the earth until 1009. This was when the time of the first portion when they ruled and reigned. So then imagine the spiritual line only available for those set apart people, what they would hear in the spirit regarding these visions. They were very scared. So then we begin to understand what it means. For instance, there is a first section of it, and then the understanding of what Yahshua did, and then the seals, but those were then put together as a package, and then the person said, and he said to me, you must again prophesy upon many nations, peoples, princes, and kings. That was Yohanan in person going out and preaching. So he was not on the island of Patmos, he was before. So gives us a very clear understanding, but much more coming up and can be more detailed, but be very certain that we are truly living in a reduction of time. Please stay tuned.